I think is great. I mean, I could just say what just happened, and then we could talk for half an hour. But I mean, you've been around in this fight for a long time, and you've really been through so much hell. I don't know how you've managed, to be honest, but I mean, you've done so much for the movement and been totally relentless and totally courageous and, you know, blunt, like unapologetic, which I have full respect for. Tell us what just happened to you.
Well, the reason I thought What Just Happened was a good title is because, and it remained a good title, is that I told Stella O'Malley about the title about a year ago, thinking, wow, all the crazy stuff I've been through. And a year later, it's like, I mean, I just can't. I was going to write a follow-up to my memoir called What Just Happened, and I keep thinking, and there's the ending. And then a week later, I don't know, the fucking FBI break through the door, but it's just. But it's also kind of a question I think is important because I think we're all in the same situation. I felt it today very strongly while listening to Johnny, which was the only. I'm so ashamed I missed Ethan and Corinna, but I was exhausted. Anyway, but I was looking at Johnny's story today, and it got to the bit where he said that the doctor said to him when the estrogen was making him secrete something from his nipples, welcome to womanhood. You know, I mean, I don't know about you. I think we all probably have the same feeling, which is, did we all die? Is this hell? I mean, I've seriously thought that at times, you know. And then I moved to Arizona. I'm like, oh, it's not so bad, but like. But it's it's a question I think we need to answer because, like I was reading, I keep talking about it, but I just recommend everyone read the book The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. Yeah, good. Some people know it. It's very slim, it's very simple, and it was written in, I think, 1947 or something, and it could have been written yesterday about the trans movement. But there's one key difference that I think is really interesting, which is he looks at, in the book, he looks at various different revolutionary moments, including Nazism, communism, French Revolution, you know, anything that shares a certain kind of upheaval and then a settling down. He calls these two phases the active stage, which is, you know, Kristallnacht and things like that, and the bureaucratic stage, which is when the fascists or whoever the new movement is finally in place and is finally making the laws. The internet has given us this extraordinary moment where there was no active phase, or at least many of us in here were completely taken by surprise by it, you know. The active phase, there was not a bullet fired until a few weeks ago, you know, and these people were already in the bureaucratic stage. And it just goes to show that like there's a danger that none of us expected about being connected online, you know, which is that like it creates these little Hitlers in every group. And if that little Hitler understands the language of the movement, well, everybody else just goes, oh yeah, well, they seem to know what they're talking about, you know? And it gives them too much power. So what we have is sort of decentralized tyrant problem, you know? And I think that what we never did, and I've said this again and again too, I'm sorry for repeating myself, but what we never did is we never just spoke to each other about the effect the internet has had on us. We just let it happen, you know? And we went through all these terrible stages, like I did this myself, giving my kids iPads, you know? And you realize now it's like giving your kid a gun, you know? But we never had those conversations. And so I think, that's why I think What Just Happened might be a good title for something, because we're all in the same place. What the hell was that? You know?
Yeah, and I mean, when I first got involved in this fight, I predicted that it would neutralize women's rights and ensure that women couldn't have their own spaces anymore. I knew that it was insane and made no sense and was incoherent. I could never have predicted that it would get this far. I would have never predicted what would happen to kids, that we'd be sterilizing and mutilating kids and calling it healthcare. I would have never predicted that so many people would not just jump on board with gender identity ideology, but with gusto, to the point where they're supporting violence and threats and terrorizing anybody who says the most basic, obvious thing. Like, who would have predicted that for over a decade now we have to say men aren't women over and over and over again, and define female over and over and over again? Yeah. I mean, first of all, did you predict any of this would go so far, and how did we get so far?
Oh, no, I didn't predict. My supposed bravery was based entirely on the fact that I thought people would agree with me immediately. I didn't think I'd have to keep saying over and over, they're hurting kids, to stop the puzzled looks on the faces of BBC journalists as they went, what made you, why did you pick this particular, it's like, don't you have any women in your life? Don't you have a little girl? Don't you want her to be safe? Don't you want her not to get this fucking mind worm in her head that she might be a different sex, And I think that, when I was talking just a second ago about that feeling of unreality, I mean, God knows what it's like for the younger kids here, a lot of the detransitioners who are here, who've grown up with all of society telling them a poisonous lie that has impacted their health to some degree or other. It's mind-blowing to me that these kids have to grow up knowing that society, I don't know if it's hate or what, but this society just does not care about them, What Johnny was saying earlier about the idea of one other kid going through what he went through, it's like, why doesn't everyone feel like this? I don't get it, I mean, I've been to Genspect conferences for a while now, and they get bigger and bigger. And I used to think that's a great sign of success, but then I realized a lot of the people here are parents who've lost their kids, Like another thing that you can bring up, what just happened, is that all these kids grew up behind a screen, and they mistook their online lives for their real lives, and they thought that they had arms to go into when they rejected their parents, And they do and they don't. They have arms to go into in the same way that young girls used to flood to San Francisco and be met at the bus stop by dirty old hippies, It's almost like every so often there's a convulsion that tries to break up kids from their parents, which of course is the dream of every groomer, So anyway, sorry, I sometimes ramble, so you'll have to forgive me. But yeah, but my big thing is that what's called today trans healthcare, that needs to be flipped entirely so that it becomes real healthcare for detransition people. Because not only are they going to have to deal with the physical impact, but again, the psychological torture. I was thinking about it today, like a lot of the arguments that are being waged against us, and my brief imprisonment was, but these are forms of psychological torture, and it's the only weapons they have, because the debate makes there's no rational other side to this debate. And we never hear it. We hear the same cliches every time. The thought-terminating cliches like, my life is not a debate, and stuff like this, and stuff that's easy to remember, And they trot these out, and you see politicians. I saw an Irish one just the other day, you know. She had the argument, men are going to go into the toilets anyway. You're not going to stop them. And it's like, what are you talking about? At least we know who the bad ones are by them forcing their way into toilets, you know. So the whole thing just falls apart, and I don't know. I think it's. Can I ask a question? Actually, one thing I'd be curious about: if it hadn't touched your life personally, do you think you would be in this fight? By show of hands? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's roughly half. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think the vast majority of people, they have to have it slam in their face before they wake up. And it's, and that's what I, like, you know, when you said I was blunt, well, the reason I'm blunt is because I just don't know how else to be when they're hurting kids, you know? And when the BBC is deliberately suppressing the voices of people fighting against it. Paddy Kilty's newfound respect for freedom of speech, as Stella rightly said, looking forward to the invitation, you know. Sorry, this guy runs a thing in Ireland called The Late Late Show. And what I just find extraordinary, and it's another aspect to the unreality of all this, is that they're able to just continue talking as if none of this is happening. I don't get how they're able to do that. The wall of silence is so complete. It's like, surely by now someone, like Beth Byrne actually did it. Beth Byrne did it recently. She pulled an Elaine Miller. Elaine Miller was... Is she there? Can you stand up, Beth? Hey! But like that seems to be the only way to shock them out of complacency and to frighten them into not, you know, the idea that you might do it again, you know. I was going to throw all my BAFTAs into the Thames, but I realised it would be a bit like when the KLF burnt £1 million and no one noticed. But yeah, anyway, sorry. Let's have the
No, don't
question.
apologize. We're supposed to be talking. This is good. We don't have a ton of time, unfortunately, and I want to try to save a few minutes at the end in case people in the audience have a question or two. So if you do have a question, think of it, and then you can put your hand up at the end, and I'll choose one or two. What did it tell you about society and about people in general that such an insane, harmful, dangerous, disgusting ideology and practice took hold, and that so many people supported it? I mean, are you cynical?
No, well, I take a historical view of it. I think, again, I blame the internet. Sorry, I blame the internet on everything.
I do too.
But like when the printing press was invented, there was apparently after that 100 years of chaos, because everybody who read a Bible and came up with a new theory was able to write it down, and people, because they saw it written down, believed it. I don't think we're very far from that. I think when people, like the way I was, most of my friends unfollowed me on Twitter because people would say to them, I notice you're following Graham Linehan, you know he's a bigot. And my friends would say, oh, sorry, and unfollow me. No one questioned it, or because like that person saying, they know that the person saying, you know he's a bigot, represents a huge crowd behind them who could destroy their career, you know? So better for an easy life. But my point is that people see things written down and they haven't gotten over that thing of believing it's real because it's in print. And you would think they have by now, but it's very seductive. When you see something written down, I don't know, it has a magic still, weirdly, doesn't it? Except for the WPATH files, which everybody ignored.
It's all right there.
No, but that's a very good, you know, that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Mia's investigation showed that the world leader for trans healthcare, sorry, I should always put that in quotes, are a bunch of lunatics, literally. And no one cares. No one cares. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I never will, you know. I mean, the only good thing about all of this is that it's given me so much material. You know? I mean, it makes, do you know what it makes Dr. Strangelove look like, you know, not a comedy anymore. Because it's like, well, of course they're behaving like that, you know? We have politicians who don't know what sex they are, you know? I've not looked. I've not checked recently, actually. I don't care what's in my underpants. Fuck off. But another thing it is a huge victory for anti-intellectualism. It's an anti-intellectual movement. It replaces thinking with a sort of what's the word? Is it chimera? No, what's the word for a double of thinking? It's not doppelganger. Let's go with that for the moment. Yeah, a doppelganger. It's not really thinking. It's something else. It's reading lines off a script. All these thought-terminating cliches I mentioned earlier. They're very hard to argue against, you know, because they shift the floor constantly. Same way that gender doesn't make any sense. Every time a journalist asks me a question about transgender people, I always say, "What does transgender mean?" And they roll their eyes as if it's obvious. It's like, no, it's not obvious. Is it cross-dressers? Is it transsexuals? Is it young girls cutting their breasts off? What is it? Stop calling this wide group of people the same thing, you know? And they always talk about, you know, trans people being this most vulnerable in society, etc., etc. Yeah, because you make them vulnerable, you know? Like this fucking thing with the plushies. Have you seen this? All these like 22-year-old men living in filth with growing their hair long, and they all have plushies like they're toddlers. It's so grotesque. And I think sometimes sometimes they do it, you know, because they're, you know, they have problems. But I also think, I don't know, I think there's a lot of suspicious stuff going on under the water in all this, you know. Like everybody, I've been trying for years to tell people what a threat furries were. Now do you believe me? You know, this is a weird subculture. You know, they're sexualizing very, very young children by just pretending they're kittens. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty gross. And another thing that's happened is all these people responsible for this stuff, you know, they're getting comics in comic book shops, you know? Like that guy, what's his name? Assigned male? Yeah, Sophie LaBelle. Sophie LaBelle. You know, anyway, I think we're getting signals.
We've got 5 more minutes left, so I'm going to ask you one more question, but be fast, and then we'll get some from the audience.
Yeah.
I want to know what this taught you about yourself, going through all this.
You know, that I don't mind not being a comedy writer. It's not the end of the world to me. As long as I'm doing something constructive, I'm happy. You know, I'm glad to have found another string to my bow, journalism and activism. It makes me happy that I didn't just sit on my arse in Norwich for the rest of my life and write, you know, funny jokes, you know. Much as I like writing funny jokes, you know, it's like there's a time and a place, you know. And I'll just never understand all my colleagues in the comedy industry who were able to just go on telling jokes when all this was happening, you know. I guess they just don't believe it still, because it's not on the press. I mean, if people go away with one thing, just keep trying to break that wall of silence, you know. I've long thought there should be a huge protest outside the BBC, for instance, you know, because they're just directly lying to the public. But sorry, that's a UK thing. Anyway, should we turn it over?
Yes. Okay.
Maya, it's got to be Maya.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know names. Maya? Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you so much for taking my question, and thank you so much for everything that the both of you have done. Graham, as you know, you're kind of like a father figure to me, and you stood up for
brother.
You stood up for us all of us kids, all of us trans-identified kids, back when we would have been too ornery and stubborn to understand that that's what you were doing. And so I really thank you for that. And Ms. Murphy, I know the Canadian government froze your bank account, and I don't want you to be frozen, so here's a hat I made. And I guess, so my question to both of you, and I know I'm sort of overstepping by getting into your territory, but the question I have for both of you is that obviously both of you understand intimately that bad ideas, parasitic ideas, are extremely socially contagious. And I believe, and I think you have shown through the work that you've done and the way that you've inspired so many people, and also enraged many people, that bravery too can be contagious. So I guess my question to both of you is, what lessons have you learned from the way that you've been ostracized and treated and hounded by these institutional forces that, you know, that you, I guess lessons that you've learned from that you think you can convey, you know, to the younger generation, like a little TikTok soundbite maybe for the Gen Zers, like
I got a good
bravery.
one. I got a good one. Don't let your wife pick your friends. Because if it doesn't work out, everyone disappears. You got one?
Well, on that positive note, I'm not really very good at sound bites, but I'll give you a few sentences or 5. I mean, I'm actually really grateful for what I've been through, because I don't care what anybody thinks about me, and I'm not scared of anything. And I think that it's so important to just, this is going to sound like a cheesy message, but to just be yourself, and then you attract people around you that actually like you and won't hopefully drop you because you say that men can't become women, or that you shouldn't mutilate kids' bodies. But, you know, like, I lost so many people in Vancouver, and, you know, kind of went through hell in some ways, but then the people that stuck by me, and you know who they are, and you make new friends. And it's like, I know it's scary to go through that, and it is really difficult, but you come out the other end stronger and better and happier and more confident in yourself, and surrounded by people who aren't cowardly fucking idiots who are going to go along with these like travesties and this kind of horror just because they want to maintain their status on social media, or, you know, maintain their income, or keep their little friend circle. So it was all for the best. I mean, and hopefully we're on the way out. Like, hopefully this is
100%.
over. Like, I feel like this is getting to an end point.
Also,
Do you?
well, I'm not sure, but I tell you, I just think we're getting actually to a slightly scary point, a possibly dangerous point, and we need to really look out for each other and be careful out there, you know. But
I definitely don't think it's over yet, but I'm sort of
it's the trashings of a dying thing, and it's going to take out a few people on the way. But I just want to say one thing, Stella. I was going to say, yes, what you said, when you break out of those kind of thought control patterns that other people have, you feel like Neo in the Matrix without any powers. Stella.
I got sent a question.
Maya, get yourself sat down before you get... Okay.
I got sent a question to ask you. The person said, I know he moved from England to America. Is there a difference in the culture? You've moved from London to Phoenix. Is there a difference around trans, or being out and about, censorship, not getting arrested in the airport?
Yeah. Well, you know, when I moved to London, I had a blessed feeling after achieving a kind of a mini fame in Dublin as a rock critic. And I started to feel a bit self-conscious in Dublin. So I left for London, and I really enjoyed disappearing into the crowd in London. It was much bigger, but now that's too small because I know I'll get you know, I don't often get bothered, but it's happened a few times, you know. Guys, I mean, they literally think they could say anything because that's what they do behind a computer, and I surprised 2 young men quite a bit. But the tension and the feeling of being under surveillance, and the fact that we're all now potential Stasi officers with our phones, and if I was like to fall over in the street, someone might catch it and say, Graham Linehan was on the run from police when he stumbled. You know what I mean? I mean, I had a drink outside a pub once, and a person took my photo, and I knew what they were doing, and they walked off, and I ran up across the road, and I said, hey, and they turned around and I took their photo. And then at that Christmas, on Christmas Day, they published a photo of me sitting outside the pub and said, Graham Linehan outside a pub without his family on Christmas Day, you know. So I thought, hang on, I think I took her picture. So I went back through, and it was like summer. And I found it, and the account called itself the Socialist Collective of Norwich or something like that. So I said, meet the Socialist Collective of Norwich, and they deleted the account immediately. So.
Do we have another question?
Hi. So I know you missed some of the talks earlier today, but Corey gave a great talk about how evidence isn't going to work anymore in the fight. We need to get into shifting narrative. We need to, just like the churches have started to steal narrative, and they've created such a convincing narrative. And then Jennifer did an interesting talk where she was talking about brand and how to make something cool. And I know that as a writer, people are constantly saying, can't you write something funny about trans? And I know you always go, no, because it's not funny to me. But I am curious, as a person who's spent a lot of time thinking about this and probably spent a lot of time kind of in the wonder space, like what if, do you see a kind of an area or a wedge or a place where a narrative could be made cool or could shift, or where we could spearhead something fun?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I tell you what I'd love to see, a kind of equivalent to that show that everybody was slagging off last night. Because it's a very rough show for kids, for teenage kids. Oh, Euphoria. But a gender critical Euphoria would be interesting, you know. And you know, here's the thing. I do see a space for all that. I just don't necessarily want to do it myself. I've spent the last 5 years thinking about this stuff. If I can think of a good story, I will, definitely. But, you know, it's kind of work, whereas you know, comedy is like fun and play to me. So we're writing something at the moment, and we've been able to not mention this issue throughout the whole thing. And it's an environment you would think the issue would be mentioned, but we save it up for just a very nice ending. So you know, it's going to be there when it's useful, but otherwise, one of the big problems with this movement, it is so irrational that it doesn't follow story conventions, because it's so mad that really, I just think before we do any fiction about it, we have to do a documentary and just capture it all. I don't think a lot of Americans know that they had a nuclear waste guy named Sam Brinton who was stealing the luggage of divas from airports. You know, that should be more widely known. He was in nuclear waste management. Anyway, sorry, someone has a question.
Hi, Graham. I love you, by the way. This is what I came for today. I was going to ask if you're single, but I'll ask something else. And if you don't want to answer this question, I would totally understand. But as someone who also speaks out, since Charlie Kirk has died, my children have asked me, you know, like, will there be videos of me if you got shot, Mom? And so having children and going through this, I was just wondering, in hindsight, would you do anything different protecting your children? And is there anything I should know as a speaker how to protect our children?
Yeah, this is what I would have done differently. The first thing I would have done is I would have wiped everything public about me from the internet. Not my comments or tweets, you know, that's just opinion, but anything that was linked to my address. That's one of the first things they did, is they published my family's home address, you know. And the person who published it is a very dangerous man who is still on the loose in the UK. Just lock down. Get an expert in. And if you can't find an expert, ask ChatGPT. No, seriously. Seriously, this is like every time I have a problem now, I just ask ChatGPT and the problem's solved. I also think if people are a bit nervous about it and stuff, maybe for sometimes creative reasons or whatever, but just remember how useful it is for activism. You know, there's a program called Notebook LM, and I tried to read the WPath files from cover to cover. I read half of it, but it was so big that I got the PDF and I put it into Notebook LM, and then I was able to ask it questions. What are some of the most extraordinary stories contained within this document? And prints out a list. So you have things that sometimes are a bit too much of a mouthful for journalists who are, you know, running around on their editor's whims, and you can give them these little fact checks. You know, Notebook LM is a AI that just reads your document, so it answers questions about the document. I've put in what do you call them, contracts, and said, should I be worried about anything in this contract? And it's listed things. It's so useful. You've got to start using it if you're not already. And I don't mean Notebook LM, I mean AI in some way, because it just makes everything faster.
I'm so against this message, but I'll just let it go because it's not my talk.
It supercharges activism, I think.
Do we have another question, or is that it? Can we do one more? Oh, thanks so much. I'm so honored to share the stage with you and to be your friend here.
I really know how to end it on a bang, don't I? Thank you very much. I will always... are we leaving, yeah? What? I will always love the Genspect crowd and everything you've been through. You know, the only kind of thing I can say that might take the edge off a little bit is that it is a historical moment, and people don't come out of historical moments in one piece. So look after each other, and I'm glad you're inviting me back year after year has finally paid off. So thank you. And thanks to Megan. Thank you, Megan.